Picture it. Cincinnati, Ohio, 2016. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, the wind is blowing through the silky locks of a gorilla named Harambe. Oh, my bad. Wrong gorilla.
We'll always remember you, Harambe.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Hard Times Strongmen podcast. Today we're going to be talking about gorillas.
We're recording this episode on gorillas because this is important. This is something that everybody should know. This is the whole point of this entire project. What we've been pushing towards, laying down this foundation, raising the bar, raising this baseline, is for this. Everybody has a duty. Everybody has a responsibility to protect themselves, your families, your communities, your neighbors. Part of that is becoming a proficient gorilla.
So by the end of this, you're going to have hopefully a clear understanding of what a modern day guerrilla fighter is or isn't and does or does not do. We're doing this just because time may come when we all may need to defend ourselves, our family, our property, our town, or our country. That being said, let me just explain that we are very loyal patriots. We both fought for our country. We went overseas. We faced off against the Taliban. We believe that there's a lot of good that's been done here in this country. We would not have volunteered to put our lives on the line if we didn't believe in that. However, we aren't blind to what's been happening across the globe, especially with the unrest happening both here and abroad. I'm just going to specify that we are not here to look for a fight. We're not encouraging people to go out and look for a fight. We are just peaceful people that honestly just want to be left alone.
I'd even say without a but, we're patriotic, freedom-loving Americans, period. If you go back to our roots, that's why people immigrated here from England to the colonies. They wanted to be left alone. They wanted to live their life as they wanted to live it, and there came a point to where they had to defend themselves, whether that's from the locals, from the American Indian population, and eventually from a tyrannical government. But we're trying to go back to our roots here. We're trying to revitalize old habits for Americans. You should be able to look out for yourself and your community. And that statement, it's a lot broader than just soldiering or military operations.
Yeah, that's pretty all-encompassing, because if you think back 200 years, which wasn't honestly that long ago, that's just a couple generations. The vast majority, it seems, of the people that came over here were farmers. They were hunters. They were traders. Okay, some were lawyers, some were bankers, some were, shop owners, but a good portion of people were farmers. Nobody was a soldier. So they had to learn these tactics being taught by someone that was in the British military or even, the French military, Spanish military, it doesn't matter. They learned basically how to be soldiers, how to be militia, how to be guerrillas from people who had experience.
A great book, The Swamp Fox, talking about Francis Marion. So a lot of these guys even learned new tactics, because we're talking about colonial America. So we're talking about revolutionary warfare type tactics, standing in rows, sending a volley, taking a knee, sending another volley. All these guys that fought in those conflicts even learned from their adversaries, so the French and the Indians, and they incorporated that into their tactics.
Right, because who wants to stand in a line and get shot at? I don't.
Yeah, have you seen a musket ball?
Oh yeah, it's a smooth ball of lead.
It's atrocious. And fun historical fact: a lot of the militia guys turned and ran as soon as they got within shooting distance. But that's neither here nor there. Good opportunity to distinguish guerrillas from militiamen, because there's a lot of stigma on those two camps, on those two words.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people haven't actually done the research to look into what each of those actually is. So when you think of a militia or a militiaman, a lot of people have in their minds, white supremacists, camping out in a tool shed out in back east or, whatever, cooking up moonshine and all this crap, right? But really what a militia is, by definition, is military force that's raised from the general populace, raised from Jack and Jill's, just you or me, people that don't have real military experience, and they're supporting their regular military. Whereas a guerrilla, it's still the locals, but they're not trained. They're performing all of these, combat operations in enemy-held territory. So for people who have seen Red Dawn, the protagonists, the main group, are a bunch of high school kids. And then Russians start falling from the sky. But they don't have these skills. They don't have any infrastructure. They don't have any real support. And then they're going and having to go out and fight this huge war machine on their own.
Right. They had to learn everything on the fly.
Everything. And we'll get into that. But just so, militiamen, it's essentially state-sponsored military force. Guerrilla, you're on your own. Enemy-held territory. And the whole point is to try to, reduce the effectiveness of the occupying force. You're not trying to go conventional warfare on this threat that makes you infinitesimally small.
I mean, if you don't want to go with the Red Dawn reference, let's look at this from real world examples. So if we're talking about militia, we can talk about the Revolutionary War all the time. They had militia. They had the reputation of turning and running. And, like you said, the Swamp Fox, he took that reputation and turned it on its head because he let them continue to think that the militia is just going to turn and run. But he organized a band of militia who basically did guerrilla warfare. And they were extremely effective. They were incredibly demoralizing to the British soldiers.
To the point to where some British officers would not operate in his area.
Right.
Simply because he was, such a harassing force. They had the reputation of being everywhere at once, but he ran his guys ragged.
Yeah, if I remember right, he also targeted the officers first.
Yeah, his marksman would target the officers first, but getting into guerrilla warfare, he rarely tried to go head to head with these guys.
Right.
It was always ambush tactics, raids, harassing fire, that sort of thing. Because at any one time he had like a couple hundred guys on a good week. Because a lot of these guys, because it was militia, right? They'd be in near their hometown. And it's like, oh, I can't go too far away from my plantation. And so if they had to go to an operation a couple hundred miles away, it's that's not for me.
Yeah.
Or if they were starting to lose, then he'd have people turn on them. He had spies, like just all sorts of nonsense.
Right. Yeah. And actually, an even more modern day militia would have been the Ukrainian civilians. Actually, up until including when Russia invaded Ukraine, Ukrainian civilians were taking up arms and getting trained by the Ukrainian military and special forces on basic rifle marksmanship, basic tactics, everything they needed to know how to be actual militia. Because they needed them. Look at the size of Russia. Like their military is huge. Their technological advantage is huge. Right up until everybody started sending weapons, money, and supplies to Ukraine, and that kind of like even the battlefield. But that was the end of the militia as far as Ukraine was concerned, because the rest of the conventional forces for Ukraine ended up doing guerrilla warfare on the Russians, and it's been extremely effective. I think that's the one difference between the militia and the guerrillas that I actually respect the hell out of, is just how effective their operations are.
Especially with the firearm debate in the States. A lot of people say, good for you, you have your AR-15, you have your assault rifle, whatever they call it. It's not like you're going to take on the government. The government has jets, the government has tanks, the government has, bombs, machine guns. How are you going to fight that? And, to that we say we have, a lot of historical examples. Recent memory, there's Vietnam, Afghanistan, most recent being the war in Ukraine. People united with even minimal supply, minimal training, can get a lot of work done. We're not talking about conventional fighting, this huge army fighting this huge army. It's more a war of attrition. There's, a lot of harassing fire, raids, ambushes. A small force can be absolute hell to an army because they have that mobility, they have that flexibility, that adaptability. So we made that distinction between a militia being state-sponsored, kind of, state-trained, state-run, and the guerrilla just, being strictly local, no real support, no intelligence, gathering except for what you can offer. You're not getting supplied by the state. You're basically acting on goodwill, and that's why especially psyops and civil relations are such a huge thing for guerrilla fighters.
They are entirely reliant on what they can bring to the table and what they can gather and what they can actually get from locals who are friendly to their cause. And that as a guerrilla will make or break you, because throughout history, you have to play to the local population and get them on your side. It's the hearts and mind concept. If you don't, you're facing an uphill battle on your own. You are literally on your own at that point without the civilians.
So that's a lot of what we're seeing with the Ukraine situation, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, because as far as what they were going through, they were just normal people going about their daily lives when Russia invaded them. The civilians there had no form of military training. They had to scrounge for food and money. They were dependent on other countries for food, money, weapons, additional forces. They became targets for war crimes, which has been documented lately. The Ukrainians that left ended up becoming refugees because they didn't want to fight. So they ended up going to other countries, and they became reliant on those countries for their good graces to give them shelter, to give them food, to give them clothes, to give them, even jobs. They had to earn a living. They had to be able to pay for stuff.
Yeah, even the Ukrainians that didn't leave. So, guerrilla fighters, if you're in enemy-held territory, you have to provide everything that a conventional military has. You still need food. You still need water. You still need arms and ammunition. You still need clothing. And income. You still need an income, so you need a way to generate that. Otherwise, your cause is dead in the water, as are you.
Absolutely. And I bet the civilians that stayed now kind of wish that they had trained, stockpiled, and created their networks there in Ukraine.
Yeah. Not even specifically talking about, guerrilla fighters. Think about the riots. All the, that huge uptick in firearm sales that we saw. I can't imagine living in a big city and then just seeing fire out your window. Like you said, I bet a lot of people were hoping that they had a firearm. I bet a lot of people were wishing they had training. I bet a lot of people were wishing that they even just had food and water stored up. There's a lot that goes into this.
Exactly. And these situations that we've seen throughout history, all the way back to the American Revolution, with the colonists uprising against Britain, with the Dutch, French, and even Jewish resistances rising up against the Nazi powers that had essentially conquered Europe and tried to conquer Asia, all the way to present time with the Ukrainian civilians and military rising up against their Russian invaders. This is why we strongly encourage people to seek out knowledge, to seek out training, to seek out networking with your neighbors, with your friends, your coworkers, whatever, like-minded people. Because society as a whole is a fragile concept. It wouldn't take much of a push in one direction or another for a lot of things to just collapse. And then you wouldn't have access to supermarkets, your food, your basic medical supplies. They wouldn't be there.
Well, like you said, the original colonists were farmers. The whole Industrial Revolution, the society as we know it right now, is not how people operate. Not historically how society is supposed to run or how it can survive. Like this is an oddity. We as a people need to be more diligent in relearning all these past skills. All right, so you should know how to collect and purify water, how to source and process game, other food. All these things that we're relying on, like you said, supermarkets or department stores, they're not going to be around forever. So besides arms and militancy, we need to be training in this whole spectrum.
So that's why we're here. That's why we're trying to talk people through things. And even if you don't want to learn how to process game, this is why we encourage networking, because if you don't know it, someone else does. And that's a very, very important thing to have at your disposal.
I don't remember who said it, but the quote, "Your network is your net worth," means a lot. Okay, so I have a buddy, Redacted, and he is just an absolute wealth of knowledge. He's in his late 20s, but the guy is just a powerhouse for that. He's a walking library of information and just skill set. So surround yourself with people that are better than you. Bring something to the table. Because, even like you said, recent history with COVID, I mean, just right now in the States, the baby formula shortage. We're talking about even more food shortages just in general. With COVID, for some reason, people bought a lot of toilet paper. I don't know why, but there was a shortage on that.
The best part was one day I walked into Target and watched somebody trying to return like 18 packages of it. The managers told him, no, get out. You're keeping it. We're not giving you a refund. I just laughed and kept walking.
You get what you deserve.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So thanks for joining us today, guys. Hopefully by now you can understand the difference between a guerrilla and a militia. And we've given you enough knowledge for you to be able to discern what a guerrilla actually is or isn't and what they can do or not do. Seb, you want to give us some of the references for this?
Yeah, of course. And, going forward with this series, we're going to dig more into that. Like you said, what a guerrilla can and cannot do or should do. But for today, for our accountability and for your further learning, if you want to dig deeper, we got into FM 31-21, Guerrilla Warfare and Special Forces Operations. We opened the Oxford Constitutional Law Dictionary. I read The Swamp Fox by John Oller and Ordinary Men by Christopher Browning. So next few podcasts, we're going to go over your basic warrior tasks. So your shoot, move, communicate.
And further on, we're going to be talking about basic medical. We're going to be talking about networking.
Hell yeah. All right. I'm 7. That's 6. We're Hard Time Strong Men. Stay safe and be better. Don't forget to like, comment, share with your friends.
Thanks, everybody.